As Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed the Northern Ireland Protocol, keeping open trade borders between Northern Ireland and the Republic, along with new checks at Northern Ireland's ports for goods moving between there and Great Britain. But the Democratic Unionists said no. They said the new border checks undermine Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom. They walked out, and Northern Ireland has been without a devolved government ever since. Last year, Rishi Sunak reached a new agreement with the EU called the Windsor Framework. Checks this time for goods going on to Europe, but not for trade from Great Britain, which would stay in Northern Ireland. The DUP said no to this too. But last night, DUP leaders debated a new deal focused on concessions made in Westminster, not by the European Union. 5 hours of talks later, they said yes. After almost 2 years, Northern Ireland might have a government again. Full details won't be revealed until tomorrow. But our political editor, Gary Gibbon, has all the details of a very dramatic 24 hours.
For 2 years, it's been a museum of power sharing. This weekend, Stormont could spring back to purpose.
We will work with all the parties in the executive to deliver real change for Northern Ireland.
Sinn Féin's leadership walked down the steps behind him. In a few days, the parties could be serving and posing together.
I want an outcome that both Unionists and Nationalists can support.
It was a difficult political birth. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson and allies were heckled on their way into a private meeting last night of 120 senior DUP figures at a country hotel. A critic of Geoffrey Donaldson's outside the meeting live tweeted everything that was going on. At one point, tweeting mayhem in party meeting, delegate accuses police service officers of being the leak. The man mocking the DUP leader's deal claimed Geoffrey Donaldson was rushing to get agreement before anyone saw the text.
I do think he's going to make a run for it. I think he made a run for it last night, and he's going to try and do that over the next couple of days.
He might get over the line, mightn't he?
Yeah, no, he might. Geoffrey may well get over the line, but if he thinks that this is not going to be a battle a day, that every single day it's going to be thrown in the faces of every single DUP person who goes in there and implements a protocol, they're going to be challenged on this, exposed on this, and there may well be protests.
Geoffrey Donaldson marched alongside Jamie Bryson and rival party leader Jim Allister against the separate post-Brexit treatment of Northern Ireland enshrined in Rishi Sunak's Windsor Framework. Geoffrey Donaldson signed up to their strident pledges. They believe he's climbed down without achieving them.
Now, in hindsight, I think he used us. I think it was all for politics and he tried to use us.
All that we have here is a tawdry climb down by the DUP on their own tests, which patently have not been met.
Geoffrey Donaldson insisted he had cut back the border checks required by the EU, but this afternoon was not repeating his morning line that there would now be zero checks.
There will no longer be physical checks or identity checks, save where, as is normal in any part of the UK, there is a suspicion of smuggling, of criminal activity.
The leader of the rival, smaller Ulster Unionist Party had read the actual text of the deal and seemed underwhelmed.
If we leave it too long, people will start to try and pick at the deal, and there's lots to pick at.
It's got a lot of potential to unravel, is what you seem to be saying.
It's huge potential to unravel. Look, there's people here who have done this many, many times, and I've done this many, many times. And the reality is, if we leave this over the weekend, then it will be destroyed by Monday.
The Northern Ireland Secretary was asked about the DUP leader's claim that Britain would forego the right to diverge post-Brexit from EU rules if that put up trade barriers with Northern Ireland.
No, it hasn't affected divergence in any way, shape or form. However, what has changed has been, I guess, an understanding on my part of the needs of unionism.
2.5 years ago, there was trouble on the streets over this. How bad could this get? Could we see violence on the streets again?
Tensions are very, very high. People are very, very angry, so just calling people to stay calm. I mean, I think it was telling yesterday when the leader of unionism couldn't even walk in East Belfast without 4 police cars and a close protection unit. I mean, that's a sad day for Northern Ireland and for unionism, but such is the strength of feeling in his own community.
It sounds like you're sort of relishing that slightly, well, even though you're condemning it.
No, I'm not.
While unionism agonises, Sinn Féin tastes triumph. Coming top in last year's elections, it can now claim its prize.
Sinn Féin could be First Minister in a place that was carved out of the map for a Protestant majority. What does that mean?
It's massively significant. I mean, bear in mind, partition itself, the establishment of this state, was on the basis of creating an inbuilt and permanent unionist majority. And that day is gone. And more importantly, it signals now the new Ireland emerging and the conversation around a new constitutional dispensation, ending of partition, Irish unity.
She said a united Ireland was now within touching distance, which won't help Jeffrey Donaldson's selling of the deal, which continues at breakneck speed.
And Gary is with me now. Gary.
It's interesting, isn't it, the way this is being sold without the details announced. And there are echoes here of what Rishi Sunak did with the Windsor framework. There was a lot of sort of attempts to get buy-in before anybody actually saw the detail. It's almost like Jeffrey Donaldson and his team have been given some sort of masterclass in all of this. But as you were saying, it looks like the timetable is fast and now emerging. We see the documents tomorrow, all of us. Some of the party leaders, as we heard there, have seen them already. On Thursday, the House of Commons will debate the appropriate legislation and pass it, no question about that. Friday, the invitations come out to come back here to all the parties who haven't been here formally and properly since for 2 years. And the jobs will be divvied up if nobody has got to Jeffrey Donaldson in the meanwhile. It doesn't feel as though they're going to do that now. They might be sort of licking their wounds and wondering, do we come for him another time? It's not clear how decisively, a word he keeps using, he actually won that vote in the meeting you were hearing about there last night. Decisive could mean something to him that it doesn't to the rest of us. But
so was he quite clever by pushing them into a corner here?
Well, I think he feels he has been. I think he feels he has outplayed some of the people to the right of him and pulled something off. But you can't finish a moment a day like this without just reflecting on how this... power sharing is a term that's been around in Northern Ireland for a long time, but this is epoch-making. This is power sharing with Sinn Féin on top in a place they were never meant to be on top on. That were Republicans, Nationalists, none of them. And potentially, as their leader was saying in the hall there earlier today, potentially, maybe sometime soon, on top in Dublin as well.
So history has been made, but delayed by 2 years, as it were. Gary, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to the Sinn Féin leader, Mary Lou McDonald, and I began by asking her how she feels about today.
I would say not alone am I relieved, I'm actually hugely optimistic. I think today is a day of great hope. We're not quite popping any bubbly stuff as of yet, but we've a little bit more work to do, but it's now clear that the DUP will return to power sharing.
That is clear.
Yes, it is. We will have an executive, we will have a functioning assembly, and let me tell you, there is a huge amount of work that needs to be done. So there's a sense of relief, of optimism, and it's not a moment too soon, because the levels of frustration were absolutely enormous as we waited and waited for this day to come.
Have you actually cast your eyes on the final agreement that they've signed up to?
Well, we have kept in touch with both governments and all parties as this matter was concluded between the DUP and the British government. And for us, the bottom line was that there could be no harm or damage done to the Good Friday Agreement. So we are satisfied that that is the case. And we look forward now to the British government doing what they have to do by way of statutory instruments and so on.
But the Windsor framework has not been fiddled with, has it?
No, I mean, the fundamentals of dealing with the outworkings of Brexit never really change. And by the way, remember, people in the North voted against Brexit. Brexit was always a very, very bad idea for Ireland. So it had to be straightened out, and there have to be arrangements that allow for that. The DUP expressed concerns and worries, wanted clarification and some modification. They have gotten that, and I think all parties to that discussion are now satisfied.
But there are those in the DUP, I mean, there are unionists who are terrified that this, that even a couple of checks in the Irish Sea of goods coming across is the thin end of the wedge, that this is the end of the union with Britain, that eventually we're going to see the reunification of Ireland. What do you say to those people who you kind of need to you need to talk them off the cliff.
Well, of course, we need to be thoughtful, and we need to be sensitive to everybody, and we need to remind ourselves, I think, collectively, that the rule book we've all signed on for is the Good Friday Agreement, that the continuance of the Union with Britain is only possible if the people are so agreed, and equally the reunification of our country, which I advocate for passionately, it means that you need to have a democratic mandate for that. So the great genius of the Good Friday Agreement is that it allows democratic space for all views, and meanwhile I pursue Irish reunification and colleagues pursue the maintenance of the Union. We still have the space, the capacity and the responsibility to work together every day on what they would call the bread and butter issues, but the issues that really matter to people's quality of life.
Let's look at the bigger picture. Michelle O'Neill will be the First Minister, and you could be the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Ireland, you're smiling, if there are elections later this year or next year. 2 Sinn Féin women running both sides of Ireland, as it were.
Hallelujah, the women have taken over, no harm. Well,
the Sinn Féin women have taken over.
Yes, absolutely, and not a moment.
You were once the political wing of the IRA, now you're going to run the whole place.
Not a moment too soon. Look, Michelle O'Neill will be the first Sinn Féin First Minister in the North. That is seismic, you're right. It's a demonstration, an emblem of the profound change that has happened here, and it's a good news story. What might happen down south of the border after an election, we can only guess at this stage, but we're working hard, and our ambition, it could well be, and that's in the hands of the electorate. In any event, the bigger story from Ireland is the story of change, and I think it's immensely positive that we see now a generational shift and a turning of the wheel.
Mary Lou McDonald speaking to me earlier. Well, joining me now here is Alex Kane, a columnist for the Belfast Telegraph, amongst others, and the former Director of Communications for the Ulster Unionist Party. Alex, thanks for coming out on the cold. What do you think changed? Why did Jeffrey Donaldson finally sign up to the Windsor Framework?
Because I think the moment of decision was always coming. In fact, it's been coming for the last 6 months. I think people who supported him wanted to move. People who opposed him wanted him to move. I think the crucial point, particularly in the past few weeks, the government, I think, just said to him, we're not giving you any more time. If you want us to do anything further for you after 6 months of negotiations, then you come back and tell us your party is over the line.
So basically nothing substantially changed in the Windsor Framework. You know, Brussels have said they didn't change anything at all. I mean, London hasn't really given us the details yet, but essentially he was forced to sign up because he had nowhere else to go.
He had nowhere else to go because the minute that Windsor Framework went through with a whopping majority, they knew it wasn't going to be changed. They knew
so why did they wait so long? I mean, this is another year of misery for the people of Northern Ireland.
It's a tendency of unionism, I think, to take its time. It likes to talk. It has so many clients it needs to talk to. You'll never see a unionist leader say, I'll talk to my party. They'll say, I'll talk to my party. Then I'll talk to just about everybody else. And that's a long process.
And is there a danger that we're going to see more of that in the next 48 hours?
I think the command paper is published tomorrow. The parties will sit through it. His opponents, and there's a lot of opponents in the Orange Order, in the Loyalist communities, in the TUV, they will look at it, they will try and pick every hole they can find in it, and some of them will try and force this back to the DUP executive, not necessarily to win, but to cause more problems to Donaldson.
Where does this leave unionism? Assuming that it all goes ahead, where does it leave unionism?
I think it leaves unionism unsettled, as it always is. Matt, you need to go back 50 years to 1972 when that building was their parliament and it was closed. Every time they try and resuscitate it, they think they've lost something. You will never hear a unionist say the words, actually, the union's still here. We're still in the United Kingdom. We're still...
The glass is always half full.
They don't even see the glass. That's probably the real problem.
And the history will be made here, I mean, assuming it goes ahead on Friday, with the first Sinn Féin First Minister in that building. Right?
And
you might even get a Sinn Féin Taoiseach in the Republic later on in the year or next year. It's possible.
Well, if you look at the demographics and the electoral figures, that is a fact of life, and unionism has to accept it. You cannot wish it away. And you know something? They knew the rules of the game.
But do they know that?
Yes, deep down they know it.
Do you know that?
Look, I've been saying this for years. I've banged on about the realities of this for years. But unionism, I think the problem is, Matt, they look back, they always feel that they've lost something. They always feel that they've been betrayed, either by London, by Dublin, or even by their own side.
So how many years before United Ireland?
It won't happen in my lifetime, but I'm quite old.
But
now.
you're very young.
No. I don't think there'll be a border poll anytime soon, because I think nobody, given what happened after Brexit and given the state of toxicity between communities still, they don't want anything which is going to rock the boat. I think they'd like to see stability up there for a few years and then see what happens.
So the number was just over £3 billion. That's the sweetener from Westminster for the DU, for here. Is that enough?
It's not. In a sense, it's not a sweetener, because a sweetener is something you have on top of everything else.
Yeah.
Most of that money will go into. It's allocated already. I mean, they will, within 6 months, it will be gone, and they will be coming back saying, well, we need some more.
And the reality must also have been for the DUP, they were going to lose votes. They were going to lose seats in the general election, given what they've done for the last 2 years. Is that also what persuaded them?
It's more an assembly election would damage them.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the general election where they're defending 8 seats with a couple of other they could win, there's no other unionist party I think is likely to take those. So the DUP is not going to take an electoral hit at this moment, but that doesn't matter, because, as you say, it's trying to persuade their base. They're walking back in there with a Sinn Féin First Minister is part of the game we now play.
Alex Kane, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.